Welcome to another game of BP Essen, and this is round 2, and we have test versus InsertName. The InsertName is on some Bant, Barx, Planeswalker, Artifact, Enchantment type of deck. It's basically just Bant mid-range in a way. Is it mid-range? Honestly, I'm not even sure. And on the other hand, we have Test, which is on Temur Temple. So both players have kept. Test keep 6 and has turn 1 Panya, turn 2 Portal Factor, and then some Rogar's Frenzy, so that's a really good hand. InsertName has turn 1 Terraformer's Globe into Barx, and they also have Embodied Soul, so I think that's also a really good hand. So both players have pretty good hands. And Test is on the play, which is pretty good for the deck because, well, if they had Cosmic Synchro here, then play draw really matters because Cosmic Synchro on 1 is really devastating. But Test only has Panya on 1, which is less devastating for InsertName. InsertName leads on Terraformer's Globe. They're not going to lead on Embodied Soul. I guess because they want to get down Barx as soon as possible, get under counter spells. So yeah, Test flashes in Panya end of turn. And they draw another land. So I guess Magmatic Torrent's probably fetching a green source. Well, they're going to play Magmatic Torrent untapped. And Union Rail Strikebreaker from InsertName. So pretty good card. And InsertName's going to run out Barx immediately. And that's going to get Portal Factored, right? But even getting Barx Portal Factored is pretty good for InsertName because it basically blinks Terraformer's Globe and lets InsertName draw an extra card. Test is just going to let Barx resolve. Well, basically Barx is acting as an outpost siege at the moment, except it's an outpost siege where you can bank the cards for a turn. InsertName is going to play a Plains and probably play Embodied Soul now, I guess. Now they're going to play Sealed Riftway. I would have played Embodied Soul already. I guess they're playing around Portal Factor by just playing out their weaker cards first. And Test fetches Island. So I guess they're not gonna worry about getting their green swords for now. And I guess they can Rogar's Frenzy to Barx, so that's why I didn't Portal Factor there. But it still gets Terraformer's Globe back, so that draws InsertName yet another card. And the interesting thing about Barx is that the first ability that lets you exile the top card and cast it, it doesn't go away when Barx dies, so you can still cast the last card that Barx exiled even after it leaves the battlefield. And Test notices that, InsertName explains how Barx is kind of weirdly worded in a way that allows you to still cast the last card exiled even after it dies. So now Test draws Veilbore Meddler. So they have Portal Fracture up again, I guess, next turn. But InsertName's entire hand is super cheap, so they can probably just get in under Portal Fracture, or at least pay for Portal Fracture. So Test swings in with Panya, and just passes, like all Temur Temple decks do. They want to play during their opponent's turn. And Lush Oasis, so a tapped land, unfortunately. InsertName's probably just going to... Oh no, they can't. They can fetch an island off the Ocean Monastery to make Lush Oasis untapped. Or they can just play Nebula this turn for an untapped land. Yeah, if you're going to play Embodied Soul, you should probably at least play your land first so you can pay for Portal Fracture. I mean, Terraform's Globe also fixes your mana, so you're not super desperate to get your multicolored land into play. Oh no, InsertName's going to play Embodied Soul and get Veilbore Meddler. Yeah, Veilbore Meddler just eats up 1-cost spells. So Test is probably pretty happy about this exchange. Unfortunately for Test, InsertName has another Embodied Soul that they can play right now, using the Terraformer's Globe to make their Nebula make white mana. And then they can follow up with a Warded Tome or something and puts a counter on Embodied Soul. I guess InsertName is now trying to play around Cosmic Synchro. Yeah. They're going to pay 2 life for Nebula. I don't think that was necessary because they had Terraformer's Globe, but I guess maybe it doesn't end up mattering. It might end up mattering just because this is a matchup where life does matter. And Test has a bunch of burn spells. Anyways, Warded Tome resolves because Test doesn't actually have Cosmic Synchro, and InsertName is going to resolve by putting a lifelink counter on Embodied Soul. Test draws yet another Panya, so not the best draw for them. They'd rather get a land here, or really it's just anything other than the redundant Panya. So then they pass, they're holding a Portal Factor and Rogar's Frenzy. A Neuron encounter. So that thing draws InsertName 1 card, which is a bit bad right now, but at least it can't be countered, and it's going to get better soon. So InsertName use Terraformer's Globe to turn Plains into an island, I guess, which allows Lush Oasis to come to play untapped, which is a very clever use of Terraformer's Globe. They're going to draw with Warded Tome now, and that's another Terraformer's Globe. I think now, they just play Union Rail Strikebreaker, and they can pay for a Portal Factor. I think Test probably is just going to Rogar's Frenzy, the Union's Rail Strike Breaker, in response to the next spell that InsertName casts. Because if Test's Portal Factor is a Rail Breaker, then it kind of forces InsertName to tap out and prevents them from getting a token off the Strike Breaker, and then they can Frenzy it next turn. It probably isn't worth it for Test, so they're just going to let it resolve and then pull it after it makes its first token. Terraformer's Glove comes into play and draws yet another card for InsertName. InsertName has a lot of deck churning available. Yeah, yet another Terraformer's Globe. Just keep going through the deck, putting counters on the Embodied Soul. And then InsertName passes. Test draws Void Flare, so now they have Void Flare plus Portal Factor, and if they don't do any of those things, then they can exile Rogar's Frenzy to get 2 tokens. Test is just going to attack, and I guess InsertName's deciding whether to chump with Construct on Veilbore Meddler, and they decide not to. InsertName definitely seems to be pretty ahead, just looking at cards in hand, but maybe Test can just burn InsertName out before InsertName can take over the game. Although Embodied still kind of makes that tough because it has lifelink. Okay, so InsertName's finally going to cast the Event Horizon that Barx exiled on turn 2. And on the Veilbore Meddler, I don't think Test has a way to save the Veilbore Meddler here, so I'm just going to let it resolve. And now Embodied, so it's fully upgraded. And I'm pretty sure InsertName is more than happy to attack with it. So 4-4 lifelinker, a huge farm for Test because it's going to put InsertName out burn range. Test will exile Rogar's Frenzy end of turn to make 2 tokens. And now InsertName is going to exile Test's Graveyard to prevent the second Rogar's Frenzy, I guess. Now Test untaps and draws a Mountain. Well, at least prevents them from losing life to Painlands, but I think Test would really preferred, well, for one, they really preferred not having 2 Crystal Caverns, because then they would have Wanderlust up. Right now, Portal Factor and Void Flare still don't have Wanderlust. And Cosmic Sinkhole. So that will be able to stop Panya Tail if Test top decks a land next turn. And is InsertName going to play a near-in counter because they have nothing better to do? Now they're going to Event Horizon the Panya to prevent the tail next turn, which makes sense, but Test fortunately has another Panya in hand, and they've been waiting the whole game to find an opportunity to play another Panya. Embodied Soul comes in swinging as a 4-4 lifelink flyer, Vigilance, First Strike, and yeah, Test end of turn flashes in Panya. InsertName's gonna let it resolve, and they don't draw what they need. Land would have been great here because then they get to activate Panya's tail. Land would also be great here because now it turns on their Wanderlust on all of their spells. And Test is just going to concede because they're not going to get out of this. Embodied Soul going the distance. Although Test just got a pretty unfortunate draw where they drew lands that didn't enable their Wanderlust and then not much else. In fact, they didn't draw any green lands or spells this game, so that's interesting. Look at sideboards. I think InsertName probably wants Neutralize and Still Pandemonium, just counter spells against the Tempo deck. I think that's probably it. And then maybe Byron's Gambit because Test has a decent amount of burn. I don't think Byron's Gambit's really that good. Tempo. And on Test's side, definitely want Power Scouter because non-creature hate. Bell Pierce is also non-creature hate. Still Pandemonium. Actually, Sunken Vision's pretty good against Embodied Soul because bounces it and gets rid of all the counters. Other Corrosion, really good against the opponent because it kills artifacts and enchantments for pretty cheap. And by cheap, I mean for 1 mana because I'm pretty sure everything in InsertName's deck is less than 3 mana. So going into game 2, Test draws a hand. Now they draw a hand that doesn't have any red cards or red. Well, Wayfarer's Land is a red land. And Test definitely keeps this because they have turn 2 Meddler and turn 3 Power Scouter. Meanwhile, InsertName keeps a hand. Oh, they had boarded in Byron's Gambit. Huh. I definitely wouldn't have boarded this card in because I feel like just spending 2 mana to gain 7 life against the Temple deck is just too passive. So maybe InsertName has a plan for that card. Either way, so you get to lead off on turn 1 Terraformer's Globe, which is always pretty good because gives you mana fixing, draws you a card. So now you don't have to worry about sequencing your land plays as much. You're going to lead off on Nebula. Probably just mono blue, I think. No, blue-white. Yeah, they want a second white source for Toddy. The Terraformer's Globe resolves, and InsertName draws a Posey, which they can play on turn 3. Test draws another Veilbore Meddler. So unfortunately for Test, since they're on... Well, no. Unfortunately for Test, InsertName has already played their 1-drop, maybe they play out Warrior Tome this turn too, and Test gets to Veilbore Meddler it. Yeah, so Test is pretty happy about that. Maybe InsertName should have just foretold Baron's Gambit, because, well, no, they wanted Warrior Tome in place so that they had a posy target, I think. Now, the problem with using Warrior Tome as a posy target is that it's tapped, so it doesn't get to attack right away, unless you don't draw a card off of it, which means that you haven't drawn a card off it, so you're wasting a card for a posy target. InsertName also keeping their rail lines in hand, which makes sense. They want it to trigger Embodied Soul and Strikebreaker. So now Test has Bounty of the Gardens in hand with Cane Dancer, but they don't have double blue for Power Scatter, which is actually they fetched red with the Wayfarer Shrine, even though they had no red cards in hand, which I guess is forward-looking thinking, but I would have fetched Island there just to get Power Scatter mana up and worry about red later. Maybe Test just didn't want to repeat of last game where they just couldn't enable Wanderlust. Or maybe they're just running one copy of each basic. No, they're running two copies of each basic. Okay, so yeah, I guess fetching Mountain there was mostly just to make sure that any burn spells they drew are still castable, and Wanderlust is only one land off, even at the cost of not being able to play Power Scatter this turn, which would have been really good this turn, because InsertName is probably going to play a Planeswalker, and Power Scatter would have been able to counter that. I think this misplay might have just lost Test the game if the Planeswalker ends up going the distance. The Posy comes down, which actually I feel like that's a weird one to lead off with. Maybe InsertName's trying to bait out counter spells with Posy first before going Toddy. I definitely would have tried to go Toddy first, because, or at least try to get Toddy to stick, because attack his fetch lands, which is a big part of Test's deck. It's also really annoying for Test to deal with, because like it just comes down, you get the plus to it because Test has Veilbore Meddler out, and now you can just chump block Test's creatures for a bit. Anyways, Test lets Posy resolve, and InsertName is probably just going to +1 to Posy, puts it out of burn range, and also they don't really have any good second ability targets. They can probably Posy the Terraforming Skill next turn, although that's kind of annoying because it makes InsertName's mana a bit worse. The Test is just going to Bounty for 3, because they have 2 Cane Dancers in hand, and they want Bounty in the yard so that they have a Cane Dancer target, at least. And I think Test is really looking to draw land. They don't get the land, they get Poor Fracture instead. So yeah, kind of a repeat of last game where they drew a bunch of Wanderlust cards, but not the lands to enable it. Because they're swinging out Posy, their name chumps with one of the Merfolk tokens. Knocks Posy down to 2. So now Posy can start doing Posy things, and Barx, yeah, that's also really good, because now you can Barx Terraform the Globe for 1 mana. Now InsertName's thinking about what to do here. I think the best play here is to just play out the Barx first and see what... Wait, no, play out the Barx for 1 will get countered by Veilborn. I guess that might also be a good thing, because you bait the Veilborn with Barx. If your opponent taps off for Veilborn, then you get to cast your other Planeswalker. So yeah, InsertName casts Barx for 1, exiling the Terraformer's Globe, and Test more than happily Veilborn Meddlers it. But that gets Terraformers Globe back into play, which allows InsertName to draw a card yet again. They draw Sealed Riftway. So that's a pretty good Posy target. You can use the second ability of Posy to turn your Sealed Riftway into a seal, a 3/3 seal, after you draw a card off of Sealed Riftway's ETB. InsertName's just going to play Toddy instead, and Test has no way to counter it. The Toddy is really annoying here because it makes chump blockers for the Planeswalkers, and Test can't really get through chump blockers. In fact, InsertName just generated 3 tokens off the Planeswalkers plus abilities, and now Test can't really kill the Planeswalkers through combat. And Test still fails to draw a land, which is really unfortunate for them. At least Veilbore Meddler is going to eat something else next turn, because InsertName's definitely going to play Sealed Riftway. The Test swings out with their 2 creatures. InsertName can trade off their tokens for 1 of the creatures, but they're just going to chump block. Actually, maybe InsertName's just playing around a burn spell. Yeah, that makes sense. So now Test gets to club Poor Fracture plus Veilbore Meddler, and in of turn, if nothing happens, they get the Cane Dancer Bounty to make another 3/3. InsertName plays Sealed Riftway. Is Test going to Veilbore Meddler that? Yes, they are, and that's actually a pretty good decision, because turns out InsertName actually doesn't have much else in hand. They have a bunch of good Planeswalkers on the board, but Baron's Gambit doesn't really get there. 7 life isn't very good in this situation. Maybe 2 top tokens is. Maybe InsertName just foretells Baron's Gambit because they have nothing better to do with their mana. Or maybe they just play down the train lines because might as well get some mana ramp. Yeah, they're just going to foretell Baron's Gambit And they've also plus their planeswalkers to make tokens, which are really annoying as chump blockers for test. So test untaps and finally draws their 4th land. Unfortunately, it still doesn't enable Wanderlust because it's a duplicate. But at least they have Power Scatter up, and they can also Portal Fracture plus King Dancer on the same turn now. Test swing out yet again with the planeswalkers. So is InsertName going to trade here, because or are they still playing around burn spells? Seems like they're still chumping and playing around burn spells. But I think InsertName sort of can just afford to keep chumping, because it's not like Test really has a way to get through chump blockers. And the planeswalkers are generating more than enough tokens each turn. So another Terraformer's Globe. InsertName thinking twice about whether they want to play into Veilbore Meddler. Well, fortunately for them, Test is out of Veilbore Meddlers now. So Terraformer's Globe resolves and draws InsertName another card. It's a land. Seems like they actually are sort of out of stuff. Can Toddy fetch anything? Actually, yeah, Toddy can fetch Union Rail Strikebreaker. So does InsertName want to do that? If they fetch Union Rail Toddy, and then they play 2 rail lines, makes 2 tokens. Also, cast Byron's Gambit from the Foretell, makes even more tokens. I think InsertName just sort of wants to keep plussing Toddy because chump blockers are good right now. And no, InsertName's going to play out their rail lines for no value. And they're going to plus Toddy to make some more tokens, plus Posey to make another token. Actually, Test sort of does have to worry about Posey's ultimate. But now that Power Scatter exists, Test can just flash in Power Scatter and start attacking down the planeswalkers past the chump blockers. So yeah, Test is going to flash in Power Scatter, not targeting anything. And now InsertName is going to Foretell Byron's Gambit, cast Byron's Gambit from Foretell. I guess that's a good time to do it while Test is tapped out of counterspell mana. So InsertName now has a giant token army, but Power Scatter will be able to fly over the token army. Test draws. Okay, now they have Wanderlust enabled, and Portal Fracture will be able to start making tokens. So Test is probably looking towards King Dancer on Bounty, and then Portal Fracture, and then King Dancer on Portal Fracture. Well, either way, Test is swinging out with other creatures. Is InsertName still going to play around burn spells and chump block here? Yeah, it seems like they're still playing around burn spells. Oh no, they're going to try to trade with one of the bounty tokens. Well, it seems like InsertName just chump blocked there. Now Test just gets a pass. Suppose he's whacked down to 2 and it's going to die next turn to Power Scatter if nothing happens. Deacon encounter would be a really good top deck from InsertName here. Unfortunately, they don't get it. So now they're going to have to just settle with... They can -4 Toddy to get a Union Rail Strikebreaker, but it's a lot less good once you've already exhausted your rail lines. I think at this point you might just want to 0 the Posey to turn your Terraform's Globe into 3/3, because at least that thing trades with the bounty token without having to worry about combat tricks or burn spells in that case. Posey's going to turn the Power Scatter into a 3/3 without flying. I guess that works, because you can just keep making chump blockers. I guess Toddy... Wait. Oh, they're getting life with Toddy now, I think. Because they have too many creatures, so they can't actually +1 Toddy to make guides. In that case, I feel like they probably should have just -4 to Toddy to fetch out a Strikebreaker. Or maybe they boarded out of their Strikebreakers, and that's why they're not using Toddy's -4. Well, either way, Test is going to King Dancer now, and probably Flashback Bounty, making a 4/4 plant. And playing King Dancer plus Bounty also lets you cast 2 spells, which buffs all the Veilbore Meddlers. The board is looking really scary right now. InsertName still has chump blockers, but chump blockers are going to start running out here because the planeswalkers are going to be able to keep up with the numbers of chumpers needed. And Panya. Okay, so now Test can just flash and Panya end of turn, and then next turn they activate Panya Tail and probably just win from there by taking 2 turns in a row. Test is just going to attack with everything here, I think. No point in holding back. They even attack with the King Dancer, which makes sense, I guess. Doesn't really trade very favorably with tokens, but might as well just get damage through. And they're going to point everything into the Planeswalkers. I guess that makes sense too. Once they get the Planeswalker out of the way, they can start worrying about... Oh no, they're only going to point some of it to Planeswalkers. The force chumps, I guess. I feel like that might be a mistake. They probably should have just pointed either everything at the Planeswalkers or everything at face, because now InsertName gets to chump with 2 things, and then they can accept taking a bunch of damage right now because they're a pretty decently high life total, so they can afford to just not block. But they're going to chump some bigger stuff, I guess, just to not go too low. So now InsertName has only 1 token left after that big swing, and they're down to 16 life. And they top deck into the land. How many lands have they drawn in a row? No. Yeah, that's really unfortunate. Top decking this many lands in a row. They're going to +1 to Posey. And guess, yeah, +1 to Toddy. Make 4 chump blockers. Test is going to end up turn Flash and Panya, which also buffs the Veilborn Meddlers. I think 2 attacks in a row is probably just enough to finish InsertName. I don't think they have enough chump blockers to prevent themselves from dying to that. Test draws yet in the Protofactor. Not that's going to matter because InsertName has nothing to cast, because they drew all lands, so there's no targets for Protofactor. And Test cast the Panya Tail, so they get to take an extra turn after this one, and they get to attack again in that turn, and yeah, InsertName concedes. InsertName got off to a pretty good start, but then fizzled out after drawing a bunch of lands in a row, which is quite unfortunate for them. And meanwhile, Test got off to a kind of rocky start with not drawing lands, and in fact, not even enabling Wanderlust on 4 lands, but they got there in the end after fighting through InsertName's chump blockers. So, time for game 3. InsertName gets a hand with one Cosmic Sinkhole and a Neutralize and Embodied Soul, so I think they're definitely keeping this. Meanwhile, Test gets a hand with Relic Corrosion and some decent cards too, so I think both players are keeping. And Test decides to bottom the Power Scatter. I probably would bottom either Bounty or Cane Dancer here because Power Scatter on the 3 is just really good. Then again, maybe it's because Test is on the draw, so they're not going to be able to turn 3 Power Scatter or something. InsertName leads off with Embodied, so I think Test is more than happy to Relic Corrosion that thing. Honestly, I might have just let off with turn 1 Terraformer's Globe so that next turn I could play Embodied Seal and keep up a counter spell. And Test refuses to Relic Corrosion before InsertName and tapped, so that's actually going to come back to bite them quite a bit because now they can't sneak Relic Corrosion under a counter spell. But depending on if InsertName taps out or not. Well, no, they're not going to tap out because they don't have anything to cast. So yeah, they get to Terraformer's Globe, draw a card, and now they have blue mana up because they can Terraformer's Globe, they're playing this into an island. So now I guess InsertName gets to choose whether to activate Embodied Soul now or not. If they want to keep pulling up counters or if they want to attack with a soul. And they wisely refuse to attack with the soul. They'd rather keep up the counter. And Test is going to fetch an island. Are they just keeping... They're not going to Relic Corrosion and Embodied Soul right now. And they draw a second Relic Corrosion, which is quite good for them. So yeah, Magmatic Torrent probably fetching Lush Oasis off of that. So I guess they're looking for an opportunity to... They want InsertName to tap out, I guess, before they Relic Corrosion the Embodied Soul. I feel like Test sort of messed up this game when they didn't go for the Relic Corrosion when they had the chance to, because now they have to just keep holding up Relic Corrosion for Embodied Soul. Then again, like, maybe it's because they didn't want to fetch Forest off Wayfarer Shrine. I mean, I think fetching Forest off Wayfarer Shrine there was fine because they had 2 Magmatic Torrents, so like they can't get all their colors. And okay, so now Test is going to Relic Corrosion, but that's going to get countered by Cosmic Sinkhole. Maybe InsertName just wants, or maybe Test just wants InsertName to waste all their counter spells on Relic Corrosions. I mean, that still doesn't really make sense because Relic Corrosion is one of the best cards in this matchup, so you'd rather get your opponent to waste counter spells on something else. InsertName is going to neutralize instead of Cosmic Sinkhole here, which could actually end up mattering because InsertName has a harder time holding up Sinkhole for higher amounts than just snapping off neutralize for 3. I guess now Test gets to... Yeah, and now they can't even Veilborn Meddler to neutralize. I guess that's maybe that's why InsertName used neutralize first to play around Veilborn Meddler. Anyways, Test is probably fetching Crossfire Guiders off this Magmatic Torrent. Well, either ways, now InsertName has Cosmic Sinkhole for 3 up. Yeah, they have the rail lines too, so they have Cosmic Sinkhole for 3. Is Test going to Relic Corrosion here? They are, and now is InsertName going to tap out for Cosmic Sinkhole? Because, yeah, they are. But that's still a really good situation for InsertName because it puts a counter on Embodied Soul, and now Test has no way to counter the Cosmic Sinkhole. If they had a Portal Fracture here, then this would have been a different situation because then Test can Portal Fracture the Cosmic Sinkhole finally and get rid of the Embodied Soul. But since that's not the situation, Test has no more ways to deal with this giant Embodied Soul. And I think that's probably just going to lose them the game. And the way that InsertName sequence these turns is pretty important because, like I said, if they use Cosmic Sinkhole last turn and neutralize this turn, then Test would have been able to Veilborn Meddler to neutralize. But since they play it this way, they can't Veilborn Meddler the Cosmic Sinkhole for 3, and kind of forces Test to have Portal Fracture or Bust. So Test is down to 8 life now. They're dead to 2 swings to embodied soul, and since it's flying, you can't even chump it. So Test is going to fetch Frostfire Geysers, which they already fetched the Illustrial Aces, so, and I don't think they have a second copy of that. So yeah, they're forced to fetch Frostfire Geysers here, and I don't think they have any way to get out of this. And Test just straight up concedes. So yeah, Test not readily corrosioning the embodied soul on turn 1 when InsertName was tapped out, just straight up lost him the game.